Hello everybody, it's Ninja here, and today I've got quite an exciting announcement from Uchu. For those of you who've only ever heard of DLU, Uchu is the largest open source server emulator currently being developed primarily by Zaop and the Nexus Avenger. For a long while, it demonstrated arguably more interesting playable content than most other servers, but also for a while had a somewhat bleak future as DLU offered places to its then most active developers, Vincent and Mick. Progress on Uchu has not, however, halted over the past months. Some incredibly cool progress has been made. As opposed to DLU, which for many years had quite a clear stance on quest chain progression, not allowing players to pass beyond their end of the currently playable quest chain, Uchu's always been different. As an open source project, it couldn't prevent people from visiting whichever worlds they wanted, so this led to development being less focused on the loose ends of existing quest chains, and instead on whichever features the developers most wanted to implement, and whichever the players were most excited about. This has always been great for giving developers more freedom, with arguably Winston and Mick bringing this culture over to DLU, giving rise to its recent booming content, and has allowed areas of development such as Ninjago. With that brief introduction done, what was Uchu's announcement? Well, for years I've linked a webpage called lusprojects.github.io to people who ask me questions on this about how they can play LU, and it's a webpage designed to be a starting point for someone taking a look into the LU projects for the first time. The recommended project here has always been Woolus, Wesley's LEGO Universe server, solely by dint of the fact that it was, well, more advanced than Luni 0.5.1 and was the only other server that was an executable file, in comparison to the far more complicated project setups requiring compilation of existing code before they could be run, which was the case with basically every other server. Woolus is, however, incredibly outdated by now, and so it's been a goal of the Uchu team for a while to produce a release version, as it's known, of Uchu. A version of Uchu which could be run without any complicated installation. This was held back by certain parts of the codebase, but has recently been completed, meaning that, finally, after several years, a simple executable version of Uchu is available. And honestly, they have done an incredible job. Two tools are required, one for the client and one for the server, and they form an incredibly slick process, not only for setting up servers, but also for keeping your server up to date with the most recent development release. This is something that no server has ever really been in a position where they've bothered to do before. And so it's incredibly cool to see what's known as the Uchu tool simply update with the most recent release that's been posted to the GitHub. This is also going to be a fun space to watch in the future, with the potential for custom world loading being added into the launcher. I'm not going to post a setup video for this. Nexus has already produced a short setup video which explains, well, everything you'll need to get the game up and running, which I'll link in the description and in the end screen at the end of this video. Really, I don't have much more to say aside from commenting on just how cool this all is. Not only has a huge amount of progress been made on Uchu, much of which I haven't covered recently if I'm honest, but there's now no reason the vast majority of you watching this video wouldn't be able to set up and play on the server. It's not a complete server, no, and it's not something for which you'll easily be able to host a multiplayer instance, but it is an incredibly cool piece of progress. For the vast majority of people, setup of Uchu has meant that the only versions available of servers were incredibly limited without any real linear gameplay. This version of Uchu, however, includes factions, avant-garde survival, lots of Ninjago functionality, vaults, mail, commands, and much more. This is pretty much a landmark moment in the LU community, and really I think this may be something of a knell for other open source projects gaining traction, as Uchu now has both the nicest setup and the most content of any LEGO Universe server to date. This is really a huge step forward, and both Zaop and Nexus should be feeling very proud of themselves. A final note is that, as mentioned, setting up hosted multiplayer servers is quite challenging due to a quirk in the client mod used for security, which basically forces you to have proper domain certification for any server you try and host publicly over the internet or even on localhost. However, whilst I unfortunately can't advertise any available public servers at the moment, for those who are interested in any player-hosted public servers, which may be set up in the future, as well as for anyone just interested in hanging out with the community or keeping up to date with progress on Uchu, or even just giving me an internet poke and saying hi on Discord, I would recommend joining the Uchu community Discord server, to which I will also post a link. And I think that's about everything I wanted to cover today. I'd like to shout out all of Uchu's devs, and in particular Yui, Winston, Mick, Encry/Jet, Zaop and the Nexus Avenger, and to just say a small amount about their contributions. Uchu began a few years ago now with Yui building a C# implementation of RackNet. Vincent, shortly after and kind of overlapping with Yui, then began to implement a ton of random features, including AI, both for attacking and pathfinding, and there are videos on my channel getting very excited about that when that first happened, the first bit of mission progression, features such as abilities, and far more. Mick joined shortly after Vincent left for DLU and put in a ton of work into cleaning up the codebase to make it more extensible for the future, into pinning down bugs, making it more efficient, and implementing a few extra features, turning a promising, if buggy, server into a far more stable and feature-complete server. Around the same time, Encree, or Jet, began working in parallel and implementing more features. Xeop and Nexus then came along after Mick 2 was picked up by DLU and Encree had stopped working on the server, and began to further knuckle down on the bugs noticed by the community, now focusing on a combination of squashing feature-related, rather than performance-related, bugs, and adding new features in general, whilst at the same time pushing Uchu in the direction of not only being a stable server, but an even easier server to set up, which was culminated in today's, well, not today now, today is at the time of writing, announcement. I'm missing out lots of people's contributions, I'm afraid, simply due to time, but a huge thanks to everyone who's been involved. Uchu really remains a leading light in server development. Thank you so much for listening, and to everyone who's made it this far in the video. Your interest really means a huge amount, both to myself and to the developers. Useful links will be in the description alongside certain developer channels as always, and I will see you around. Bye.